The perfect place to start is self-love.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the impact.
If you don't love yourself, you're going to have a hard time receiving love from anyone else.
We would love to see more love in the world.
You got to start with being willing,
building those love muscles,
starting to be able to love ourselves.
like outside of ourselves. Hi there, I'm Reverend Ryan, and we are Soul Evolution Collaborative, a nonprofit based in universal spiritual principles, offering possibilities for navigating the evolution of life in an authentic and intentional way. And this is, if you can't guess it, this is Truth Be Told 2.0, a weekly series that is changing the norms and bringing you inspiring and uplifting messages, and hopefully maybe a way of looking at life a little bit differently. So this month, super excited, we are talking about love and what's love got to do with it. And you might wonder, what is the it? Well, the it is everything. And so often, when we talk about love, we use it so much in our everyday life, like I love pizza, or I love this person, or I love that movie. And sometimes this word can kind of get mushed around and thrown around. And then by the end, we don't even know what it means or if it really has any meaning at all. And so this month, we're going to talk about love. Now, love can be a noun, it can be a verb, it can be, all the things in between, because we use it so pervasively in our language. But I think for me, love is the activity, the very activity of moving towards something, of leaning in towards something. And what we know about when we move towards something, or when we lean in to something in an intentional way, we begin to see it differently. We begin to see all of its parts, and we begin to respect, and this understanding begins to create this connection with all these parts. And this is true in our circumstances. This is true in our relationships. The more that we lean in, not only to a relationship to ourselves, but a relationship to each other and the world, the more that we can lean into those, the more that we can see them from a different perspective. We can see the ins and the outs and the little intricacies, and really begin to appreciate, honor, respect, and uphold those things for the beauty of what they are. And so this whole month, we're going to be talking about that. Today, we are talking about self-love, and sometimes this may be the hardest thing for us to do, but as we're practicing this idea of love and this idea of leaning in, the activity towards something. So we're going to begin to have a conversation about applying that to ourselves, those aspects of ourselves, those parts that we love, those parts that we would rather people not see. And the more that we can lean into ourselves, then the more that it opens up for this capacity and container for self-love. So that is what we're going to talk about today. It's exciting. I'm excited to learn about how we can use this in our everyday life, and then how we can change the world. And so if you're ready, buckle up, sit back and relax, and enjoy this episode of Truth Be Told 2.0.
So the perfect place to start in any conversation about love is self-love. Because if you can't love yourself, if you don't love yourself, you're going to have a hard time expressing love or receiving love from anyone else. And that's kind of just the cut and dry version of it, as not fun as that sounds. We got to start with self-love. We got to start with being willing, being at least starting to be able to love ourselves. Now, I think often it is talked about as if you can't be in love, you can't receive love if you don't love yourself. And I don't know whether that's true or not, and that may be individualistic. It's kind of up to you and your experience whether that's true or not. But I will say the depth of love at which we can experience has a whole lot to do with how much we are able to love ourselves, how much we are willing to love ourselves. And the reason this is so important is because, well, we need connection, we need love in life, and we live in a world that has created systems and mentalities and frameworks that actually work against us loving ourselves, right? There is this sort of social control that was, I hope, inadvertently put in place years and years, I mean, decades, centuries ago, where for us to be good workers, right? For us to be good members of society, we had to fit the mold. We had to fit into how life worked. And maybe this is part of the evolution of humanity, but we are certainly at a place now, at least in time, where no longer do we fit that mold. If we ever did. If it ever worked, I don't know. But now, certainly now, we as people don't fit that mold. We're not fitting into that conformity anymore. Life doesn't work the way life used to work. And I think it creates this big swirl, right? I don't think it's one way or the other, or this came first or this came first. But I think the evolution of humanity and our experience says that that system doesn't work anymore. We don't work being controlled. We don't work conforming to everything being same. And I don't know that we ever did, but certainly now we don't. So uniqueness defies the systems. So self-love defies the systems, right? Being to fit in and conform says, don't be you, be like this. Don't look at that part of yourself, do this, right? And so uniqueness, recognizing who we really are, and then embracing that requires a form of self-love. So being able to recognize the truth of who you are, recognize your authenticity, becomes self-love, which becomes system-defying, right? So loving ourselves is actually like breaking down systems and frameworks, most of which kind of control us into this mass direction, right? And so we're seeing those things break down, and we are seeing a cultural value placed on authenticity, a cultural value placed on self-love, loving the parts of me that I was taught to ignore, to squash down, to get rid of, to be embarrassed of. To be willing to begin looking at those things is an absolute necessary step in cultivating a deeper sense of love, period, for ourselves and for anyone else. So giving love, receiving love, feeling love, all starts with authenticity, starts with recognizing who we are, our uniqueness as part of the whole, and being willing to love that. And so, yes, let's commit to that idea. Let's commit to the idea of embracing self-love, because it is truly necessary and world-changing. And when we do that, we're going to see the world show up around us completely differently and in a way that actually starts working for each one of us, working for us as individuals and working for us as a collective. While you're here, remember to hit like, subscribe, maybe even drop a comment. We would love to hear from you, and thanks for watching.
So we've talked a little bit about the importance of self-love. Now let's talk a little bit about the impact. I think that you can agree with me, hopefully, that we would love to see more love in the world, more of that engagement with one another, more of that leaning into curiosity and learning more about one another, more about appreciating one another, even when there are differences. And so we know that the more we learn to love ourselves, all the intricate pieces that we have to go through to love ourselves and to lean into those aspects of ourselves that sometimes we would rather avoid, that what we're actually doing, not only are we impacting ourselves individually, but we're actually building those love muscles, those skills that are needed to love like outside of ourselves. And so the more that we can begin to love ourselves and all the things and the skills and the stops and starts that takes, then the more that we can easily do that in the world around us. And so when we are able to do that, when we're able to meet the challenging circumstances of our lives, the challenging people of our lives, from this new perspective that we've gained through this practice of loving ourselves, we can apply that same practice to those people, to those situations, to those circumstances. And you know what's really interesting? not only are we changed by this process, but everything is changed by this process. The more that we're able to do this, the more that we're able to expand this action into this world, this love into the world. And that we'll see, just like Dan said, the more that we can do this, the more that we see, not only do we shift, but the world shifts around us. And we begin to see ourselves, each other, our collective we from a new perspective. And the more that we can love each other in this new way, the more that we are transformed by this action. Because isn't that the purpose of love? It's not this kind of static action that has no significance or has no impact. But the purpose of this of love, and of not only loving ourselves but others, is to actually shift and transform and change the way we see ourselves and each other. It's not just to stay static and change everything out there, but it's to actually be changed ourselves by this action. And so in turn, when we begin to do this, not only in our own life, but then we begin to do this in our interactions with everyone else, we serve as an example of what love can look like. Like, as we begin to shift and change these frameworks, these systems, these ways of interaction, we begin to actually see the impact of our practice of self-love in like our real 3D world. And so our decision to commit to loving ourselves fiercely creates this ripple effect that not only transforms ourselves, but it transforms the world around